taking the term snakeskin far too literally. Here's your look at the brand new NECA toys, Dungeons & Dragons Grimsword Ultimate Action Figure. Grimsword Evil Knight is a mighty warrior and fierce fighter. He hopes to rule the land someday after he defeats all his enemies in combat. Grimsword has many evil friends fighting by his side, but he cannot be trusted. He will betray or fight anyone in order to gain power. Sorry in advance for anyone scared of snakes. Before we get a closer look at the brand new Dungeons & Dragons Grimsword, I'd like to thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample that we're about to have a look at. Grabbing the tape measure, which as far as I know is not made of snakes. I'm going to take it right to the very top of Grimsword's head. In this case, the figure stands 8 inches exactly, or the figure is going to be about 20.5 centimeters tall. Slithering our way now over to the figure's accessories, and you'll be happy to know that he still sticks with the theme of snakes. Not necessarily snake-related, though. The figure comes included with a pretty cool-looking sword, though. Long blade sword you could imagine would inflict some serious damage. The sword itself is made of somewhat softer plastic. That's a lot of S's. And painted nicely in silver. Meanwhile, the guard and hilt does have shared colors of black, sort of this crimson red, and some nice gold accents in there as well. The sword can be held in his hand, or, get a load of this, the figure can also holster his sword. If you follow the snake all the way down his torso, you'll notice at the very end of the snake is actually the coil of his rattle. And while it doesn't necessarily rattle right now, what it does, however, though, do is it serves as a solution to holstering the sword. You literally just take the sword and you slide it in between the curl of the snake's tail. How cool is that? The answer is pretty cool. So I may not keep it actually in holster right now, just because when we're looking at the figure, it's going to be a little harder for me to kind of move things around if I've got a big giant sword to contend with. The figure also comes included with a big giant shield. Now we're talking about snake stuff. Look at the big giant head on the shield. You would never be able to steal this man's shield and then claim it as your own. That's my shield you've got. No, it isn't. That's mine. Well, mine has the one that has the big giant snake head. Okay, there you go. That's for you. Like, though, the colors that we already had a look at with the broadsword, the shared colors, again, of the sort of crimson red. You got some nice gold accents in there as well. What I do like is the wear and tear that they've added to the shield, like scratches that would develop in battle. Just it looks like the shield has just been bludgeoned and hammered with various different weapons. It does holster, or I should say it does slide onto his forearm using the straps not drop the figure in the process, provided the straps located on the back of the shield. But again, you've got some nice detailing done to this, where again, you've got some nice scratching of silver added to this. Now, this does fit over his hands. You do technically have a couple of suitable hands for holding this. I mean, really, just the stock hand out of the packaging is more than enough, really, to accommodate the shield. You simply just slide it up his hand. And while it may not be the firmest of grips, it's more than enough for him to hold the shield. Figure does have some issues, though, when it comes to his feet. We're going to talk more about that in a second. But the figure also comes included with a snake mace. This looks very much like the snake mace I have in my collection as well. I'm going to talk less about that right now. I do like the look of the snake. You can see in this case, is that a king cobra? It might be. It's colored nicely, though, in green. Glowing eyes there in red. Get a little serpent snake tongue sticking out there. Really cool looking snake. I don't really have a snake mace. I wish I had a snake mace. I don't have a snake mace. Connected from the end of the snake, the top of the head snake, to the actual bearing, you can see there's an actual real working chain. And then on the end of it, you got yourself a spike ball. Talking about inflicting damage. Imagine getting swung by this. I don't know which is worse, the fact of being hit by a mace ball or the fact it actually originated from the head of a snake. No, I'm convinced getting hit with a mace ball would be a lot more painful. This does also fit into his hands with the stock hands. Actually, that's not true. I did change out this hand, and that is more than enough to actually accommodate the mace, the snake mace. What actually was in his hand just before that actually was this hand right here. He comes with a pair of relaxed hands. I did happen to pop this one off and replace it with then the gripping hand so he could actually hold the snake mace. If, though, I did want to rinse and repeat that, he actually does have a gripping hand that you can then use on this side of the figure's body. He also comes with a pair of closed fists. Who's going to want to use closed fists when you've got yourself a sword, a shield, and let me just reiterate this, a snake mace? But he does have a pair of closed fist hands if you want to use those as well. The figure also has pointing hands. So if you did want to pretend that that shield was yours, he's going to be pointing at you and say, hey, look at my armor, then look at your shield and tell me that that does not belong to me. I do like the way they add a little bit of silver onto that as well. Each of the individual fingers does have a little bit of silver, and there's also a little bit of silver on the pointing finger there as well. Again, can easily be swapped out with either one of the figure's arms, or existing arms right now. The figure, let's go ahead and just remove the shield for right now. Let's go ahead and remove also the snake mace, my favorite thing to come include with this figure. And getting a closer look now at Grimsword. The name is cool, the design is cool. I love the look of Grimsword here. Now, the designing of the character here does have, again, all the same shared colors with all the other accessories. So you get, again, a lot of that red. You get some, in this case now, silver being added with the chainmail effect. But then you also have the snake that's wrapping around his body. I can't imagine if this is a real snake. Could be a dead snake that he just had somebody permanently attached to his armor. But either way, it looks really cool. You've got, the, again, little rattle down below here that's going to be holstering the sword. But then if you follow the spirals up, it'll lead to an open mouth of the snake. I gotta imagine that that's just forged into the metal. But one nice touch is that there's the tongue that sticks out from the snake. You can follow it up its merry little way to the top of its shoulder pad. Helmet is awesome on this one. You can't remove the helmet, unfortunately, but you can still see inside there's the glowing red eyes of Grimsword. The eyes themselves look to be mostly red, and then you've got the inside pupils. If there were actually pupils there, kind of more of a glowing yellow. The helmet does have, again, all this nice additional silver that they've added to it. Underneath, you can actually still see he's got the chainmail in the neck that's going to match that of his arms. And he does also have these little spikes on the sides of his helmet. The neat thing about the helmet spikes, though, these little pieces that protrude out, is that they are actually individually articulated. So if you want, you can move them either forward, or what I like to do is actually you can move them up. So you're actually going to be getting a little bit longer of a reach further up than it is down below. I don't know if that's supposed to be the case, but I kind of like it actually a little bit more with the spikes sticking up like this. It's just, again, an awesome looking helmet. And again, like, the design continues to be awesome as we move our way down the rest of the figure's body. The only thing that's really clean, really, to be fair, on the figure's body is all the already mentioned chainmail. I mean, that stays pretty clean with that silver paint finish, but everything else looks pretty scuffed up. All the black armor, as you can see, it's not all clean black. It's got all, again, this additional silver that they've brushed onto it. It's all over his arms as well with these big giant big giant elbow spike pads that he's got there as well. This, unfortunately, does limit some of the articulation on the figure. He only seems to possess only a single hinge on the elbow, which we'll talk more about in a moment. But like the actual elbow pads, as cool and as awfully painful as they may look, it is going to limit a little bit of the figure's articulation. And again, we're going to talk more about that in a moment. Again, he's got the tops of his gloves. I don't know if that's actually, it looks to be a continuation of his armor, and then his glove would be then underneath it. But you never know. It could actually be all his glove right here, and then this is just a cup, a gauntlet, like a part that covers over the glove, so it's going to protect him from harm. This is softer plastic, by the way. Finally spitting that out. This is softer plastic, by the way, and does have some nice silver finish there outlining the edge of it. But again, all in all, just a really neat looking figure. One side, like the elbow pads, does have more of that red finish. The other side, though, does have a snake face, matching that again to a shield. I'm just going to bring back in the shield so you can see. There's a lot more paint obviously been awarded to the shield, and there's less of it given to the actual knee pad, but still fun the fact that they would actually sculpt a snake face on the top of his knee pad. This guy loves his snakes. Further down from that, again, we've got little buckles there that have been painted nicely in silver. A dry brushing. It's painted across the surface of the plastic, and he does have some really cool looking boots. The thing about the boots, though, is that there seems to be very limited articulation when it comes to his ankles. I mean, yeah, you can, for all intents and purposes, move them up and down, but I've noticed when I do put the figure down, as he already has taken one fall, he seems to want to lean back a lot, and I'm not sure the reasoning why for that. I keep wanting to hinge his feet further forward, but it seems always the case, always the case that Grimsword wants to fall backwards. He does luckily have peg holes in the undersides of his feet, so I might make use of a display stand from NECA, just attach it to the bottom of that, so of course the figure's not going to be taking a bit of a tumble on my shelf. For the articulation now on Grimsword, we're going to start first with his head sculpt. The head does rotate all the way around, does move up, and does move down. You can also rock it back and forth as well. One last time to look at his helmet. Soak it all in. Great looking head. Anyways, we're going to then shimmy out the shoulders. The figure does have articulation that gives you only about 90 degrees. A little less, actually, I should say, than 90 degrees. You can take those arms and rotate them all the way around. Figure does have a bicep swivel. He has a single hinge in his elbow, but again, like, it's very limited. They did actually cut in the part of his, I keep saying shoulder pad, part of his elbow pad, at least to allow for a little bit of extra leeway when it comes to moving his elbows back and forth. So you can bend them. You can only bend them to about, 90-degree angle. Hands rotate, though, all the way around. You can also hinge them back and forth as well. Now, when it comes to his torso, I'm just going to bring his arms back down. For his torso, you would think that he actually would just have one piece from here to here. But the fact that you already saw me do it, I kind of already gave it away. He does actually have articulation, but the articulation is smartly put right underneath the serpent's tail. So you don't think for a second when you pick the figure up for yourself that he does actually have any articulation. But NECA would never get rid of articulation on a figure's torso. They still managed to find a way to put it in there. And actually, while moving it back, I don't know if you can see that or not, he does actually still manage to have sculpted chainmail underneath. Why would they even take the time to put that in there? You would only really see it by doing what I'm doing right now, by prying back the plastic of the snake's tail so you can actually see underneath. Didn't even need to put it in there, but they did anyways. Legs are on ball joints in this case, so you can give them about almost a full splits. I guess that isn't all full splits. Take the legs and move them forward. You can move them back. The lower skirting is softer plastic, at least here, and you can actually see his lower torso is also softer plastic. Stop that. Stop that. So you can take his legs easily, move them forward. You can move them also back. He has a mild swivel at the top of the thigh, double hinge here on the knee, even though the other secondary hinge, I think, is actually just below. Yeah, there's a secondary hinge just below the kneecap. It's a little harder to move it. And then again, he has the articulation here on the feet. But for some reason, again, this foot isn't so much the issue. I can move it back and forth. I can rotate it this way. And I can also ankle rock it. This one, though, seems, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it wants to go as far up. And it always seems like, as you can see it from the side here, the foot seems to want to settle, rest on an angle. So it's going to cause a little more harder times for, unfortunately, Grimsword, as cool as he may be, to stand properly. So what I may have just doing is just move him, just bring his torso just a little further forward. That might help to stabilize him, preventing him from, of course, falling over. With all the cool accessories that this figure has at his disposal, like the shield, like the snake mace, which I really wish I had a snake mace in my collection, it certainly is going to cause a little bit more front heaviness to the figure, so you may want to use yourself a display stand that NECA does put out and sell separately to attach the underside of Grimsword's feet, so the figure isn't going to fall when you do pick this one up and add it to your collection. I would recommend highly picking this guy up and adding him to your collection. Not too keen on the snake mace? What's wrong with you? If you're not interested, though, in the snake ball and chain, you can actually holster it the exact same way as the broadsword. Simply just slither it into that holster located on the side. It will, unfortunately, have a little bit of a dangle, unfortunately, in the front of it, but it is a place to actually technically store all of his accessories. Whether you decide to put a sword there, whether you decide to put the mace there, he does have the means, Grimsword has the means, to be displayed with everything that comes included with the figure, short of, of course, maybe the swapped-out hands. Where would you want to even put swapped-out hands on a figure's body? Start attaching on to his torso and his legs? Forget about it. Those can go back into the plastic tray that came included with the figure. I'm happy, though, to be able to display everything here with the figure. Ultimately, though, when it comes to displaying this guy on the shelf, I think I'm going to be putting the sword back in its holster and most definitely be displaying it with the ball and chain snake mace. Love the idea that they would have even included that, and that's such a cool touch, adding on already to the idea that this guy loves snakes, if you didn't already know that already. The figure has some really cool details going for him, sort of muted on colors. The blacks even, for example, are more scratched up metal, so you get a lot of more silvers being added there. Not stark blacks, so you're not getting the dark colors, but you're really getting a really well detailed, very cool looking figure. Even if you're not necessarily a fan of Dungeons and Dragons, I do say this from time to time, not even necessarily talking about Dungeons and Dragons, but just as a whole, painting a broad brushstroke across everything. Even if you don't like the fandom in which these figures are based from, or you don't even follow it at all, One could certainly look at a figure like that and be instantly impressed. Seeing this on a shelf sitting somewhere in a toy store, even seeing reviews like this guy surface online, you may think to yourself, I don't know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons, but I like snakes and I like knights and I like the look here of Grimsword. I'm going to be picking up this figure for myself. You're welcome, is all I would then reply with. I would also like to, while following up to that, thank the folks over at NECA Toys that did provide the sample of the brand new Dungeons and Dragons Grimsword that we could have a look at in this review. Speaking of reviews, if you don't mind me saying this, if you certainly enjoyed the one that you just finished watching, why not throw it a like? If you guys are loving the content you guys are seeing and certainly do want to stick around for more, then make sure you hit the subscribe button down below and that you're also turning on the bell notification. I may also just throw this out, I'll whisper in your ear. There may be more Dungeons and Dragons reviews coming your way from the folks over at NECA Toys. So stay tuned for that. Somebody just right now said, what did you just say? What did you just say? I had my speakers really low. I was just saying I was going to have more Dungeons and Dragons reviews coming your way. Sir, who had the speaker down really, really low. So as always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.